VikesNow. I am Dustin Baker. We are here on the December 6th edition, heading into week 14, a 6-6 Minnesota Vikings team that really has a pendulum this week. Per the New York Times playoff simulator, I invite you guys and gals to go play with that thing. If they lose, they go down to about 30%. If they win, they go up to about 55 or 60, depending on other teams' outcomes. But yeah, we're right smack dab in the middle of that right now at about 41%. Last Sunday in particular, went horribly for the Vikings, even though they didn't play. Every team they wanted to lose ended up winning. Regardless, I'm here with Josh Frey, and we're here to break down the quarterback decision and some of the Raiders stuff. How's your week going?
It's going all right, man. Gotta take a little bit of a break, reset. No Vikings game last weekend. Just sat on the couch, watched Red Zone all day. It was a pretty solid weekend. How about you?
Not bad at all. We've had if you enjoy Red Zone, like I think every NFL den, we've had this elite stretch with the Vikings because they've been playing prime time. They have a bye. Next weekend they play at 3 p.m. Central Time, so you get to watch like several weeks worth of Red Zone. So yes, for fantasy football lovers, it's a must. All right, full accountability and disclosure. You and me, pal, were wrong. We thought Nick Mullins would get the nod. I think we got hoodwinked into believing Kevin O'Connell easily could have put his foot down last Monday or last Tuesday and said, quarterback controversy. Are you nuts? Dobbs is our guy. He didn't do that. And he said, we're going to pick a quarterback who feeds Justin Jefferson. You and I thought that sounded like Nick Mullins. We were incorrect. But it is, nevertheless, Joshua Dobbs gets a shot at redemption. Kevin O'Connell sounded ultra optimistic. Go figure. That's the O'Connell way about Dobbs this weekend. Your thoughts, your reaction to Dobbs as the Week 14 starter, go.
I kind of like the decision, if I'm being completely honest. Like I said last week, this was the choice that I would have made. I didn't think the Vikings were necessarily going to do it because felt like they wanted a guy in there that could be more of a pocket general passer like Kirk Cousins-esque with Kevin O'Connell running the offense, not really wanting to switch things up a ton. But sounds like they're buying into Josh Dobbs and his skill set. We'll see what happens on Sunday. But again, I like this move for a couple different reasons. One, it's just continuity in that starting lineup. Get to see him use his legs, hopefully, throw the ball downfield. And now Justin Jefferson's in the lineup. Hopefully that makes things a little bit easier on Dobbs, gives him another easy target to throw to throughout the weekend. And then another thing that I really think is interesting with this is with Josh Dobbs and his mobility in the pocket, this kind of gives Kevin O'Connell a chance to do some experimenting with some of his play calling with more of a mobile quarterback. And you look to this next upcoming draft, like Bo Nix is a guy that's been connected to the Minnesota Vikings a ton in mock drafts, and he's a mobile quarterback. Jaden Daniels, Heisman favorite, is a super mobile quarterback that the Vikings might have to trade up to get, but he's a guy that I could definitely see landing with the purple next spring. And then Michael Penix, another guy who's pretty mobile in the pocket. So there's a lot of upcoming draft prospects that definitely use their legs a lot when they drop back to pass. And this gives Kevin O'Connell a little bit of an opportunity to experiment with that type of quarterback now.
Yeah, I'll preface this. Unless something really changes, Jaden Daniels is you and I's guy when it comes to the Vikings. I think they'll probably have to trade up, maybe 10 spots or so to get him, but who cares if that guy turns out to be good? Nobody cares about the price tag. On Dobbs, I'm right there with you. I've said for the last 8 days that no matter who they picked, I think I was going to be like, all right, cool, let's do it. There wasn't a Mannion option for me where I was going to be like, son of a bitch, we're doing this guy. Every option had its pros and cons. With Mullins, I knew there was a mini gunslinger, kind of like Cousins, that would certainly feed Justin Jefferson. With Jaren Hall, you get to see the rookie do the rookie thing. And with Dobbs, you have the mobility. So I wasn't going to be disappointed no matter what happened, but I particularly liked the way that O'Connell defended the decision today. He basically kind of rested on loyalty, saying this is our guy. I'm going to grow right along with him as a play caller. And that leads me to believe that he realized some of his follies as a coach against the Bears, whether it was being too gun shy in the fourth quarter, whether it's not getting the guy on the run a little bit, trying to make him Kirk in the pocket when he's very vividly not. But one thing that we forget about, I think the entire fan base, is that Dobbs can be on a short leash. This isn't like Kirk Cousins or name your franchise quarterback of your choice, where it'd be psychologically damaging to say, you know what, we're done with you. If Dobbs has 2 fumbles in the first 2 drives, I'm pretty sure we're going to see Nick Mullins. So I want fans to remember that, yes, it's neat that Dobbs gets the nod here, but he can be relatively quickly taken out of the lineup if he gets up to his old bullshit that he displayed against the Bears. Now, here's my big question that I don't know if folks have talked about yet. Will we see, this is your prediction, the rest of the way, where there's 5 games remaining, will we see a non-Josh Dobbs quarterback the rest of the way?
I'd lean towards no right now, just because of how much, like you said, Kevin O'Connell expressed the loyalty factor with Josh Dobbs going into this weekend. I do think that if something weird were to happen in Las Vegas, we could see Nick Mullins, but I really do think that if we were to see a non-Josh Dobbs quarterback, it would be down the stretch of the season and it'd be Jaren Hall. Like if the Vikings somehow find a way to lose this weekend and then next weekend at Cincinnati, and then they're pretty much out of the playoff race at that point, depending on, again, how things go with the rest of the NFC. Maybe they're still in the mix there. But if we roll into that Detroit game and then the other Detroit game at 6-8, I really think that at some point you gotta spin the tires again on a Jaren Hall and see what you really got in that rookie quarterback. But I really, if you put a gun to my head and said you got to make a choice, I think that it's Josh Dobbs the rest of the way.
And I exactly agree with you. I think if they enter 6-8, 6-9 territory, that would be all the incentive you would need to say, hey, we only got a 10% chance of the postseason. We're probably not going to win out. The other teams, the Packers, have the easiest schedule you could possibly script. I think then that would be the nudge they need to get a look at Jaren Hall the rest of the way. But we can't see a redo of Dobbs from the Bears game. Whether it's in game or after that game, if the Vikings lose at the Raiders, then it's utter desperation time because you have the Packers with that easy schedule. The Rams are right there at 6-6. The Falcons and Saints, one of those teams will probably finish 3-2. So it's suddenly crowded based on the fact the Packers are hot and have an easy schedule. So you really, on top of your ordinary fandom, you want the Vikings to win this week. But if they do not, that means the Bengals game is an elimination game, so to speak. And if Dobbs struggled and he was the culprit for, losing at the Raiders, I could see them going to Mullins as a Hail Mary save. But I honestly don't think Dobbs will struggle. I trust Kevin O'Connell's play calling efficacy and the week to learn and to understand, like, what you did against the Bears isn't going to cut it. So we shall see if that translates to Dobbs being a productive quarterback against the Raiders. Now, speaking of them, the Raiders have a new coach, Antonio Pierce. And when you run their initial scouting report, their defense looks horrendous. In DVOA, they rank 29th. But if you kind of slide the bar from the last 5 or 6 games, the defense is quite good. It kind of aligns with when Antonio Pierce got there. So what are your thoughts on the Raiders in general?
I mean, there are definitely, you look at some of the names on this roster and you wonder how this team is 5-7 right now. But I mean, at the end of the day, I feel like it really comes down to the fact that they haven't really gotten it together on offense at all this season. And I don't really buy the Aiden O'Connell thing at the quarterback spot. I think he's a decent, backup, but I wouldn't want him to be starting for me. It's a similar situation to where the Vikings are in, where they're kind of just patching this thing together as it go. So I do think that the Vikings defense especially is going to have probably a field day in this game, with just some of the lackluster talent on that offensive side of the ball. I mean, Davante Adams is always going to be Davante Adams, so you got to watch out for him, obviously. But with a Caleb Evans being a full participant in practice today, seems like the secondary is going to be fully healthy. A lot of these Viking stars are starting to round into their healthy part of the year down the stretch. Justin Jefferson, TJ Hawkinson off the injury report as well. So things are looking up and up for the Vikings right now. So I really do think that it's going to come down to just this defense is going to be able to shut down the offense, and the Vikings are going to be able to get theirs, I think, on the offensive side of the ball. Max Crosby is obviously Defensive Player of the Year candidate. He's no joke, but I think that the Vikings, they're going to be able to find some holes in the secondary. I don't necessarily trust their cornerback room all that much right now. And the safeties too, like Trevon Merrick's all right. But outside of that, I really don't think that the Vikings are going to find too much trouble. Like you said, the Raiders are down near the bottom of the league in DVOA for defense. They haven't scored the ball much this year. I think they're something like 29th or 30th in terms of points per game right now too. So yeah, I if there's ever a time for the Vikings to make it a convincing win, I think it's this week for sure.
Yeah, the Raiders score 16.8 points per game on offense, which I guess it could get it done if it's the Monday night version of the Vikings from 9-10 days ago. I hope not. So you might recall during the lead up to the 2023 NFL draft, I thought the Vikings would draft a quarterback, and I kept I kept bitching to you. I was like, all these guys are 24 or 25. This is too old. So I tried to find one prospect that could blend everything. And when I turned on Aiden O'Connell tape, I thought his mechanics looked like utter garbage. And I didn't watch very much of it. I was like, that guy ain't going to succeed. Lo and behold, he's a starter over Jimmy Garoppolo for the Raiders. So yeah, I wasn't high on O'Connell based on what I saw. But to your point, they do have a lot of playmakers. Josh Jacobs, even though he hasn't been wonderful this year, was great last year. Devontae Adams, we know all about him. Jacoby Myers, pretty sweet like fantasy start if you have him most weeks. And then Michael Mayer should be pretty good before too long. So they got the tools, but I'm with you that if the Flores defense has feasted on every type of offense in the last, pretty much since the Chargers game, and then keeping pace with the Chiefs in week 5, they shouldn't have any problems with Aiden O'Connell. And then notably on the defensive part, they also cut Marcus Spears, about a week and a half ago, which was like their one guy who had experience as a corner. All right. I think the only thing that is certain is for prediction wise that this game should be somewhat low scoring. I think it would be weird to see 41-38 Vikings Raiders. I think because Dobbs likely won't absolutely set the world on fire like he did against the Falcons. I think the Vikings will, perform decent on offense. He'll start to hit his groove, but the Flores defense should feast. So I'm going to settle on 17-13 Vikings as a prediction. What say you?
I'm going to go 27-17. I think the Raiders do about their average in terms of scoring. Maybe they get maybe it's like 27-10 late in the fourth quarter and they get a touchdown, something like that. But I really do think that this is the opportunity for the Vikings to roll. Both teams are coming off bye weeks, obviously, so rest isn't going to play much of a factor here. But the Vikings need this game a lot more than the Raiders do at this point. Like the Raiders it seems like they've kind of accepted that they're not a playoff team this season. So I'd kind of expect them to not necessarily take their foot off the gas or anything, but it does kind of seem like a time for them to start playing some of their younger guys, see what they've got. And if they end up with a high draft pick, so be it. If they end up somewhere around 500, that's probably fine too. But I do think that the Vikings probably win this one by 2 possessions.
It's worth noting too, if any of the viewers are going to this game, congratulations, Moneybags, because this is the most expensive road regular season game I've ever seen. I thought I thought about going just because I've never been to Las Vegas. And now that I'm a recovered alcoholic of 11 years, I don't have any reason to go to Vegas and party, and I don't really gamble besides fantasy football. So this is going to be my excuse. I started looking at prices, and just to get in with a shitty seat's like 300 something bucks.
And I saw, I think it was Kevin Seifert tweeted earlier today that 54% of the tickets right now are projected to go to Vikings fans. So this is basically a home game for the Vikings already. So congratulations to all the Vikings fans, and good work by them to getting out there and making this basically a home game for Minnesota too.
Yeah, hopefully it's like that 2019 game at the Chargers makeshift stadium where it felt like a Vikings home game and they won 39-10 on top of it. On the other hand, I am going to the Bengals game. As expensive as the Raiders tickets were until Monday night, I haven't checked since. They were inexpensive because I think all enthusiasm dipped when Burrow got hurt. So Yannick, who's been on this show for Yannick Eckhart, he and I are going.
He's flying out again.
Yeah, he's coming for another 6 weeks.
Nice.
And he's gonna hopefully be here for a playoff push. We shall see. But yeah, we got row 16, section 111, which is like the 40-yard line, for about $160 a pop. Where if you translated that exactly to the Raiders Stadium, it would have cost us $3,600. So
it was
pretty wild. All right, I asked you this last week, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong. Let's say the NFL season ended today. Roger Goodell says, nope, we're going right to the postseason. Who wins MVP?
Oh, man, you did ask me this week, and I said Myles Garrett, but that seems kind of probably not going to happen anymore. I'm going non-quarterback again. I'm going Tyreek Hill, man. I'm going Tyreek Hill. It kind of seems like it could go to Tua, but I think if Tyreek does get that 2,000 yards, and Miami is the number 1 seed in the AFC right now, and he's just completely turned that offense around since he got there last year, and they've been just one of the best scoring units in the entire league. They're dominating pretty much everything that you could possibly imagine, and so I do think that if it goes to a non-quarterback, and I hope it goes to a non-quarterback this year, because it just doesn't seem like a quarterback really deserves it at this point, unless you want to give it to Jalen Hurts. I'm going to go with Tyreek Hill.
It's really weird how Tua Tagovailoa has the numbers. He has the winning team. I would say he has the look. and nobody really ever puts him in conversations with the big boys. I don't know what it's going to take. Maybe a playoff win or something. Not that I really care, but it's kind of odd. All right, my man, you got the Vikings 27-17. I have the Vikings 17-13. We shall see if we are correct. If we are not, you and I are going to be chatting about a very desperate Vikings team going to play an old friend in Jake Browning. All right, any closing arguments?
That's about it, man. Hopefully it's a good weekend for us.
I agree. All right, we'll talk to you next Wednesday.
Sounds good. See you then.
Later, man.